My name is Natasha Deemer. I am with a boutique litigation firm in South Florida, Dominic Cunningham and Yaffa. We specialize in all complex catastrophic injury, medical malpractice, nursing home litigation, insurance bad faith, wrongful death, trucking. Everyone's a trucking lawyer. I'm going to talk today about managing staff and hitting your annual goals. I am the firm's Chief Strategy Officer. Everybody says, like, what does a law firm's Chief Strategy Officer do? My partners would say that I spend all the firm's money. I would say my job is to very efficiently spend the firm's money. So that's what we're going to talk about. What you're going to invest in, why you're going to invest in it, and like what your processes should be for moving through that process and the decision making. And I think that this is the time of year, and frankly, coming to events like this is like when it's most appropriate, because we come here to learn from each other, to be part of this community. And I think that everybody leaves super inspired. You know, I can assume that everybody here has like a list of things that when they go back, they want to implement. Vendors that they saw yesterday that like they're definitely signing up. And then you go back to the office on Monday and 800 emails and a scheduling order and a new mediation date, and your staff is very unforgiving because you just spent 3 days playing in Austin, so, you know, get to it. And everything falls to pieces, right? And like all your best intentions and all of your investment based in this opportunity kind of falls to the wayside. So how do you manage that, but how do you make sure that you are spending your time and your money in the right places? So these are going to be the things that we cover today, and we'll run through these steps, and hopefully we'll have time at the end to go through and answer any of your questions. So big picture, what is the importance of having a strategic plan, right? It's like I said earlier, it's coming to these events, it's being somebody who absorbs all of the ideas and then going back, if you are an owner-operator or if you are an operations manager in your law firm, if you wear multiple hats, you know, how do you prioritize what you're going to execute on? If you're familiar with like the Eisenhower matrix, you know, it's basically like what's important, what's not important, what's urgent, what's not urgent, and then figuring out how to like prioritize your time. The strategic plan essentially is going to give you that, right? It's going to give you your direction. And there's a lot of different reasons why you do it. But at the end of the day, it's to make sure that like your business is successful and that you're getting the most out of it, not leaving things on the table. So before you can truly like put your strategic plan and all of the other elements in place that I think are necessary, you got to start with your why. And that's about like really just looking at yourself and having an honest conversation about why are you doing this? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? I know everybody here is here to represent injured people and right wrongs, fight injustice. Those are the common threads. But you also have your business why, your personal why, and being able to manifest that and explain it and have people attached to it, I think is pivotal to your mission. So this is my firm's why. This is our dream, Dominic Cunningham and Yaffa. We have a beautiful office on the water in Palm Beach Gardens. We rent it. We've rented it for 30 years. We're tired of giving money away. We want to build a building. It is a decision that we made before COVID, but we're doubling down on it now. I want to say for the record, this is our vision of it. We have not broken ground, but we have purchased the space. But why do we want this, right? Why are we going for brick and mortar at a time when a lot of people are saying, like, that may not be the right decision for me, and it's hard to hire people that are going to come into a law firm anymore, so why am I going to spend money on this investment? For us, it's about ownership. It's also about like really proving to our community that we are there and we are a presence and we are a place that they can depend on us. We're gonna put a rooftop in this building so that we can have events for the community. My firm is incredibly politically active. My managing partner, Sean Dominic as president of AAJ. Today, he had to leave this conference early yesterday because they're doing an event for the president tonight in DC. But like we want to be able to host those events and bring people in from the community and let them know who we are. We also have an ulterior motive, which is that the co-founders of our firm, the owners of our firm, eventually want to retire, right? Not anytime soon, so you can still take your referrals, but they definitely want to retire, but they don't want that to be the end of their legacy, right? So they want to set up a succession plan where we are taking the young lawyers in our firm, we are turning them into rainmakers now, and we are leaving them with something that they will also build on. And the last piece for us is innovation. Our firm, like I said, we've been in the same space for 30 years. We want an office that is high tech. This program actually this week has reminded me that one of the things that we need to really prioritize is our technology budget. I don't think that it's something that has moved to the level that it should. But when I was preparing for this presentation and looking at our deck, if innovation is part of what we are, and it's one of the things that we are reminded of when we look at our why and we examine it, then it needs to be built into our goals for the future. After you have asked yourself what your why is, then if you don't already have this, your firm has to spend time establishing their mission, vision, and values. If you've sat through any of the other programs this week, I think it's been a recurring theme. For me, mission is a very simple question. Who are you and why should anybody care? You should be able to answer that question. Every single person in your firm should be able to answer that question. It should be an echo chamber. Vision, obviously, you guys have heard about it. And then, of course, your values, right? Your values are going to be the thing that really determines whether or not you execute. Because your values are going to determine the type of people that are going to be executing with you. So making sure that you have a strong set of values is going to drive your financial capital and also your decision making in your human capital. Okay. This is just an example. This is my firm's values: integrity, competence, responsibility, community, family. When we developed these, we did this as a group. We went in and we had a day with our founders, we had a day with our attorneys, we had a day with our staff. We bring everybody together. We talk about what it is that matters to you in the place that you come to work every day. And we not only came up with these values, but we also came up with a list of what that is and is not. So under each of these value sets, there is a list that we have of what does integrity mean? There is no gray area here. What is it? What isn't it? And the reason why we did that is because we're going to use it in order to build our team. So once you have your mission, vision, and values, what are you going to do with it? You're going to hire and retain a winning team that's going to execute it. Because without these components, you're sort of floating at sea without a lighthouse. These are the things that have to be in place before you can really define your goals. Okay, so don't sacrifice your values when you staff. I think all of us have experienced the heartache of staffing in the last 3 years. It has been exhausting. It's been even more exhausting for me because, like I said, we're building a building. We want people who want to come to it, and when you add that layer of complexity to your recruitment process, it definitely makes it harder. But I think that what is really important, and one of the things that, I think in this environment, sometimes it's easy to just say I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. I'm going to hire that person. They're not a perfect fit, but we need bodies to be churning and burning here, so let's just go for it. It is always a bad decision. It is the definition of insanity doing that. You waste so much time. There's a SHRM study that'll say that, you basically lose 60 to 40 or 40 to 60% of that annual salary every time you replace somebody. So you have to be able to make sure that you're hiring the right people and make sure that those people are going to represent your values. We start from the very beginning, from the initial in-person interview, not the screening that your HR manager does before we let people come into the office, but like in your initial interview, we talk about the values. If we decide that we're going to hire them, they get a written copy of it, like a pledge, with their offer letter, and we say, don't sign the offer letter if you disagree with anything here. I recently had an experience where we had a great paralegal that we were recruiting who we sent her the offer letter, we sent her the list of values, we had talked about them. She called back and she said, I want to understand what this means. You know, you guys are you're very established in the community, you're very involved in political events. What does it mean? We said, we don't care what your politics are, but we want people here who like care about issues, right? Like you've got to be an advocate. And she was like, no thanks. And you know, that, to me, I feel like that was the right decision. That was the right decision for all of us. And you've got to be confident in your values and make sure that like you're not going to negotiate or compromise them away for the sake of like putting bodies in place. So anyways, we use it in the offer. We also use it in our performance reviews. I'll be going back and starting reviews next week. We're not asking people like, how many demands did you do? Like, you know, how efficient were you with closing your cases? We ask them on the scale, when you review our value that's integrity, on a scale of 1 to 5, how did you perform this year? Where could you improve? Demonstrate how you showed integrity in the office, you know? And so we do that with everybody, and then we have their attorney do the same exercise. When you're non-negotiable on your staff standards, you save money, you improve efficiency, and of course, like, you save time. Okay, just a few more things on putting a winning team together. I think a lot of this you've probably heard in other places, but you know, hire slow, fire fast. I do what I call the day one test. This is actually something I've started doing recently, and it's really made a big difference to me. I think that you sit in these interviews and you run through the gamut of what people do, and they like nod along like, yes, 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 I can file, yes, I've done medical records, you know, yes, I've answered discovery, et cetera. And then they show up on their first day and they're like deer in headlights. So now my question is, on your first day, if you're asked to notice a depot, how confident will you be, or what support will you need? You know, like I want to know that going in. Then you're also managing my expectation. You know, I know the difference between like, did you actually do any, like have you actually filed pleadings with the court, or did you watch somebody file pleadings with the court? You know, it doesn't mean that like it's a deal breaker. It just means like now we both know going into this what level of investment we need to make to get you up to speed. Incentivizing your staff to recruit and getting buy-in from your A-team. Buy-in from your A-team is like, I bring in senior staff or like, you know, other paralegals to participate in the interview process. I think that that's super important. They need to feel like good about the people that are bringing in to support them. And incentivizing your staff to recruit, I think, is a really good decision too, because it also leads to buy-in. Eliminating toxic employees, I think this is something that we all struggle with. We just went through this recently. In our firm, you have somebody who actually like has so much potential and brings so much value, except that they also like create this toxic workplace, you know, and you don't understand it because when they're good, they're so good, and they are a resource to their colleagues, right? So you don't want to punish good staff, but at the same time, when they're bad, they're really bad. And it was we had to make a really hard decision, but what was shocking to me is the way that our staff responded afterwards, which is that I realized that they had sort of like, how can I say it? They respected us for finally standing up for ourselves, right? And I was so worried that like they would they would take it the other way of like, well, when that person was helpful, they were really helpful, but they didn't. They were like, why would we want somebody here who isn't going to like show up every day at the same level, you know, as opposed to like 50% of the time. Okay. And then onboarding systems. I think that this is really important, and we got to spend a lot of time doing this during COVID. But it's making sure that people are set up for success, right? Because you don't always, your best hire is not necessarily like a 20-year paralegal who's done litigation. I'll tell you, my two best hires this year are a restaurant a server and a recent college graduate who have no legal experience, right? But they are young, they are tech savvy, they love Litify, you know, they're so hungry to learn, and they're like so so autonomous in going out and like trying to advance themselves within the firm. The one that I hired, we've promoted her 3 times in a year and a half. Like, you just can't hold her back. But making sure that like you have the systems in place to like put in really good people and set them up for success. So we built out Litify during COVID. That was like my COVID project. So, you know, we did all of our trainings for staff on Zoom. We recorded them, then we had a Zoom library that we could refer people to when we were training them, which was really nice because, you know, I would always say like, we're still gonna show you how to do this, but like, until you start clicking the buttons, it's not really gonna make sense. And now you have like a place where you can like go and be like, okay, what was that step that I missed? Cross-training is important because again, it creates buy-in. We do 30, 60, 90 reviews. You know, you've got to have a way to like stay on top of people. You can't just like wait for the 90 days and then say that was a lost cause and now I'm starting all over. Not everybody is a lost cause, but like people have to be set up for success in the way that they learn. And I think you learn that really quickly if you do 30, 60, 90 days. And then the last thing, and I feel very strongly about this, is like avoiding cheap seat feedback. It's really easy for like staff to sort of like make a decision on somebody like right out of the gate, which has nothing to do with like their competence, you know, and start like allowing that to kind of feed its way through the office. We do everything we can to like eliminate bad culture in the office. So cutting that out from the very beginning and making people know that like unless you have something constructive to add value to that you're gonna bring to the 30, 60, or 90-day review, I don't wanna hear about it. Okay, so now we're here. Let's talk about goals. You've got the right people, you've got your mission, you've got your why, and now you're just ready to like build a better mousetrap. I love this, a goal is a dream with a deadline, because that's what it is, right? Like this is the time, especially right now, we're going into November, December, you have a pretty good idea of like what your P&L is gonna look like at the end of this year. Of course, like all the insurance companies hopefully are gonna pay out last quarter and you're gonna blow through your budget and you're gonna be ready, but this is when you start looking at how did you start off the year, what were your goals, and like what are you gonna do with it going forward? You know, what is your planning gonna look like for next year? So, because this is a Litify seminar, I'm going to sort of try to tie these two themes together. When you're developing your goals, the best way to do it is to go through this process, right? And it starts with, I don't know why I keep turning around when it's right here. It starts with the discovery, right? Getting your various stakeholders within the firm, and that's not just your leadership team, it's not just your executive team, it is your staff. You know, to understand like where do they think that they were successful this year, where do they think that like they could have used more support, you know, more technology, more innovation, whatever it is. The same thing at the partnership level. When we went through the Litify process, we did exactly that. We had various groups that we assigned that, you know, we did anonymous surveys. We went and met with firms around the country who were using Litify in different phases to hear like the good, bad, and the ugly from them, so that we could really, you know, we could go into the process managing our expectations of what was realistic. And I think that like when you involve stakeholders, that's what you do. You go into the process managing your expectations. And then we set up Litify ambassadors, right? So people at every level we had at least one person that was an ambassador. If you're the ambassador for the legal assistant team, it's your job to, number one, be their advocate as we build this out, but also you're going to be accountable. And when you're setting goals, whether it's for a big project that you're rolling out, whether it's for your 2024 budget planning, whether it's for all the things that you're going to do to follow up with all the people that you met at this conference, whatever it is, having stakeholders and having the right process in place is going to ensure that you actually follow through on them. And then, last of all, your non-negotiables, right? Like when we built out Litify, we had a list of what we said were our non-negotiables. And, we probably spent almost a year building out. Our implementation team, I don't think survived. But at the end of it, we felt really good about the product that we had because we knew that the things that we went into and said these are going to be the things that we accomplish this year no matter what with this investment. At the end, we had those things, right? And everybody was invested in the fact that yes, of course, go live is a hard process. I was actually at LitiQuest. I don't know if Wes is in the room, but there she is. I was at LitiQuest, my first LitiQuest, 2 weeks before our go live, and I met Wes, and I was telling her, and she was like, why are you here? And I was like, because it is what it is now, and what we wanted, we got. There's gonna be kinks, we'll work through them, that's the case, but I actually feel really good about the fact that our go live was a really good experience. But that's because we had decision rules, we believed in our standards, we pushed back on our implementation team at times, but at the end I think that and we had this very fun theme with Litify, which was, we said, since their Salesforce can do anything, every time somebody would say no, we would be like, come on, we put a man on the moon, let's launch Litify, and they did. So I wanted to just show you this because we're pretty proud of some of the things that we did, and coming to this conference is great because it reminds me that we're ready to take it to the next level, but the foundation that we put in place was one that we felt really good about. So some of the decision rules that we said is that there's going to be a single source of truth, right, which means you only enter the same piece of information into the system once, ever. Right? There's going to be no duplication. And we definitely want to see if we can find a way that we can automate the naming of documents and of rote tasks. That was a big part of the logic was it doesn't matter what level you are in the firm as an employee, we're a law firm. We are a professional business. We don't need people entering in tasks, send medical records, did you follow up over and over and over again. It's 2023, that's not how we're gonna operate. So we had these decision rules, and then the other thing that we said that we were gonna do is we are a trial firm. Every lawyer in my firm has that sickness where they just love to go to trial. If anybody knows Fred Cunningham, he's one of our founders. He loves to put his heavy metal playlist on full blast through the office and be like, it's go time, we're going to trial. So in our firm, one of the biggest pain points that we had is that the attorneys are in the office on a Sunday or a Tuesday, and family is one of our values, which means we want our staff to be able to go home and enjoy their weekends and not be on the phone nonstop. But when you get into the file and start digging through to figure out what you need, you have to get into the mind of the paralegal that put it in when the case started 3 years ago, who's no longer in the firm, and try to figure out what they named it. And where they put it, and then what they forgot to follow up on, et cetera. So we wanted to eliminate that. And so we took away the naming of documents for all of our staff, and this is just an example of our correspondence object. One of the ways that we did this in Litify is that we use all the objects. we don't just have like Docurio folders that all of our documents go into. So like we use pleadings, we use correspondence, we use medical, or I forget what they called it, damages, things like that. But when somebody, I didn't do a demo for this, but when in any of our objects, whether it's pleadings or depo, correspondence, whatever it is, when they go in to create a record, they're gonna select like 3 fields, right? The role, which is like who it's from or who it's to. The date, I think, auto-populates. They're gonna type in a description, and then it's gonna automatically save it, and it's gonna look something like this. So there's like 3 or 4 fields that you pick, and then it's gonna and then when anybody is looking for it, they don't have to guess what it's called. Every party has an abbreviation assigned to it, so it just shortens the names by the abbreviation. So, and also that means that like if it's DCY, our firm, or DCW is what it was, it's DCW in the entire system, because there's only one party record for DCW. It has one abbreviation, and if anybody ever calls anything in the system, names anything with that party, it's going to automatically abbreviate it to that. So just took like the guesswork away. Nobody has to like think about where they're trying to find stuff. This is just another example of like an automation. I feel like this is something that hopefully a lot of people use, but I have mentioned the automation of tasks, right? Like this was especially important for intake, I think. We use the matter plans for the matters, but in intake, there's all this follow-up, and so all of our intakes are handled by an attorney and her team, right? Every person who calls the firm talks to a lawyer first. That's one of our policies. So I didn't want our intake attorney, who's getting an attorney salary, spending her time every time she does an intake and like docketing for herself to like, we asked the client to send in the medical records. Did they send it? Have we gotten the signed contract back, et cetera. So as we move through the different stages, and you can see we have like all these different stages with each, as she moves from one stage to the next in the intake, it automatically creates these reminders for her or her team, So she's also never having to like follow up with them, because like they're getting it automatically. It has changed our intake process, I have to tell you, because before we went live with Litify, we were going to expand our team, because we thought that's the only way that we're going to be able to like continue to sustain our growth and provide the same value to our referral sources. Most of our cases come from referrals. But this process eliminated the need for us to like hire more, like another lawyer, and just hire another assistant, who can like actually take care of like getting some of the tasks done. But like our lawyer was freed up from a lot of the time that she spent doing admin stuff. Okay, so here we are, new year, new goal. Everybody, how many people here, of a show of hands, like are gonna leave this conference with a list of things that they want their office to implement? Okay, fun. Okay, so in order to make money, you have to spend money. How are you gonna invest? I put this together as like a small example for you guys of a snapshot of a law firm. This is the model, and I can see it. This is the model that we use, okay, at least for our firm, to make some decisions. So this is a phantom law firm. They're spending 33% of their gross revenues on personnel, marketing, facilities, which is like, the basic like in the office stuff, equipment. As you can see, there isn't a tech line item. There should be. There will be next year. Their gross revenues are $7 million. They're actually hitting like a pretty high profit. There's going to be some other things that like take out some of that profit, but like these are supposed to be kind of like your biggest expense categories for your gross revenues. And just, so that we're all on the same page, like gross revenues for me is the fee to the firm, right? Like after referral attorneys and anybody else, the clients have been paid, obviously. So they're making a tidy profit here. Should be pretty happy, you know, keeping your overhead like under 50%. Let's assume that like there's other items there that are going to add up to more. But this is not an advertising firm, so their marketing budget is lower, you know. Obviously, some of these factors are going to be specific to your office. My facilities cost is going to probably quadruple when we build our building, but you know, for now, it's a different number. So this is, at the end of the year, you're going to pull this, and you're going to see, you know, everybody, your accounting department is going to sort of give you like this overhead of like what you spent, right? And you're going to hopefully use that along with maybe a fee projection report, all the cases that are in your pipeline, to determine like what is next year going to look like. And all these great ideas, you know, are we going to bring in an LSAP team? Are we going to hire somebody like Daniel Moon, I think? I'm going to hire somebody like him. You know, like, how are we going to make these investments? Well, the way that we've been sort of making our decisions is like this. This is, again, I know that there's lots of masterminds out there that talk about like how to build your business. This is the logic that we're following, which is that your business should, if you see on the, I can't do my left from right, but this one, this is approximately what you should be spending on these categories for a healthy business. Again, like if you're a big marketing firm, like you know, a big advertiser, you might have like higher margins on some of these things, but these are kind of like, if you are going outside of these categories, for example, personnel, if you're spending more than 42% of your gross revenues on personnel, it might be time for like a timeout, right? Like that's an opportunity to say like, what are we doing? You know, why are we spending it? And is that something that should inform our goals going into next year? So if your decision is, listen, we're having a good year. It's great that like we did, you know, $3.8 million in profit, but like I'm going to need you to do better than that next year. You know, I think we have the potential. I think we have the momentum. Let's go for it. We want to hit $10 million next year, okay? To me, that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're going to get 10 million, like you're going to, you know, whatever it is. I'm terrible at math, but like $4,400,000 in new profit. Your profit is probably only going to be, it is going to be $4,400,000 in profit. But what you want to be able to make sure that you do is you look at like the decisions that you're making if you're going to increase revenues and how those are going to affect your budget. Because the fact is that like if you intend to increase revenues by, let's say, you're going to do VA disabilities. You were inspired. People are making money on this. You know, he said it was hard, but it doesn't sound hard. Like, let's just go for it. My firm was just at MTMP in Vegas. We are a litigation trial firm, but every time we go to Vegas, we come back and say, like, should we do mass torts? Are we going to do it? Is this the year we're going to do it? Before we make those decisions, the first thing I do is look to see, like, where were we on our gross revenues for this year? How did it match up against our GLs? And where should it be against what is, like, this targeted number that I'm trying to hit? You know, because if I look at it, I might say, like, okay, you know what? I can probably add some money to my marketing budget and, like, you know, and think about, like, what should I spend that on? Or, you know, we're really light in like what we should be spending on facilities. And we probably, that may mean that like we haven't spent enough time thinking about our firm infrastructure or our technology or our resources. You know, is there something that the staff has been saying that we need that like we just haven't like taken the time to invest in? Like these are the questions that I think that doing this exercise will help you ask yourself. And again, like I said at the beginning, the discovery session, these are also the questions that you want to like have other people be involved in, right? If you're making goals for the firm and you hired the people that are going to help you execute those goals, you've got to communicate them with them and make sure that they're involved in the process. So if you want to increase your revenues, you want to go from 7 to 10, it it probably means that you're also going to be increasing your spending in some of these areas. And you want to look and see how you do that and whether or not it makes sense. Okay, so I think I just covered this, but what investments are you going to make? Is it going to increase overhead? Are you going to increase overhead to increase profits? And what opportunities are you going to pursue? Like, those are the questions really that I think that as you go through your planning for the new year, you want to identify. So just a few things, and I think that, again, every firm is different. The infrastructure that you have from one to the other varies, but looking at your ROI, obviously, using your marketing dashboards to make these decisions, very important, I think that evaluating your campaigns to see what's working, what's not working, it's probably something that, like, if you're doing a lot of stuff on social, you should be doing on like a minute-by-minute basis, not like once a year. But these are the things that I look at for our firm that I think that go across the board for everybody, okay? Cases turned down within 90 days. Why? And before in our old case management system, we didn't have like a button for tracking why, just that it was turned down or even closed, but like Litify allows you to customize that, and I think that that's super helpful because it's important to know we're a big medical malpractice firm. We get the records before we sign up the case a lot of the time, So like, what happened between when we signed up the case? Because if it's being turned down as a case as opposed to an intake, that's a big distinction. What did we learn between when we said, here's an intake, we're signing it up, and 90 days later when we decide to turn it down? Because like, you're spending a lot of people time on that. And you really want to be able to understand and ask yourself those questions as you're setting your goals for the new year. How much is spent on turn downs, right? And then like, what are the obstructions in your pipeline? What is it that is slowing down your progress? If you were in here for the 10:30 session, Emily did a great job on medical records, which I know is the bane of everybody's existence. But what is happening in your firm to ensure, what are the obstructions in the pipeline that are preventing progress from happening? And those are questions that you have to ask your staff, right? Because they're the ones who are they're ultimately the ones who are accountable for it. But what is it that they're doing? Because if you have the right people and they live up to the values of the firm, then they're not lazy, right? And they truly want to be there, and they're hardworking, and they want to do a good job. And so if they're saying to you, I'm spending so much time doing X, Y, Z, and it's just, I'm spinning my wheels, you have to be able to look and identify those as obstructions in your pipeline, and then see whether or not you can either automate it, beauty of Litify, or put in place some other product, whether it's text messaging or your DocuSign services and things like that, automatic reminders. One of the things that we did when we went live, and it was just a small thing, but it really was like a big deal to the staff, was SOLs, right? We always say, like, we can fix any mistake but that. So like, you can come and say you screwed anything up. It is never going to be a deal breaker. But if you blow an SOL, like, we have a big, big problem. We can never fix it. So we're militant about how SOLs are docketed in the system, right? And Florida requires that you keep 2 sets of calendars. I think most bar associations do. So like, you're putting it into the case management system, you're putting it into Outlook, you're doing 10-day reminders, 15-day reminders, whatever, 6-month reminders. We also, because like in med mal cases, we'll do like a 90-day extension. Anyways, and then there's also the question of like, what if they haven't technically signed their contract? Aren't you still sort of responsible for the SOL because like the client may assume that like you represent them, So like, then there's the intake. So we set it up with the date fields in Litify where like, once you hit that button and you verify that the SOL, because there is that question, what you assume is the SOL, and once you've verified the date with medical records or police report, you click that box and you get all the reminders automatically calendared in Litify, bidirectional sync into Outlook, reminders on everybody's calendars, but like the time that people saved by not having to basically carve out their morning, on a Friday to just like enter in all the SOL reminders over and over again. It was a big deal. Okay, looking beyond the P&L, like I said, cases turned down within 90 days. And then this is the other thing that we always like to look at. I'll be doing this exercise next week when we go back. Total fees over 50,000, divided by the number of cases. Total fees under 50,000, but divided by the number of cases. You want to look and see, like, where's the bulk? Like, number one, where are you going to get your biggest bang for your buck? But also, when you go through that, you're going to analyze what are the resources that you're putting towards this area of practice that maybe at the end of the day has, 300 cases that generate $300,000 and all the people that are involved in that versus like this area of practice that's generating $3 million for 30 cases, and the 3 people that are dedicated to that. So making sure that you look at those metrics, it's, to me, like, if you only look at one thing to define your goals for the new year, this is it. Okay, and this is how we track them, right? So this is our goal sheet, and this is, it's an iteration that everybody has seen probably in some form or format, but this is what I do. So we go through, every attorney in the firm has their case list. Once a quarter, we ask them to review it and project out, an approximate date when they think it'll settle and a settlement value, right? And we look at that. That helps us like with our spending for the year. It helps us with our projections. But now, like this year, or I should say this month, when I go back, one of the things that we'll do is we'll sit down with each attorney and say like, okay, so here's your pipeline for 2024, right? We've looked at your cases. You've said that like, here's the 15 cases that you really think are going to settle next year, and the resources that you're going to put into it. This is what you think they're going to generate. I don't see anything in the pipeline for 2025, so we need to look at that. We need to see like what is going to be your marketing plan for the new year. What are we going to do to make sure that like you're filling that pipeline? What's happened with the intakes that you've had this year, the ones that you've turned down? Do we need to tweak what you're doing? And then, what I like to do, it never works out this way, but whatever the budget is, the big number for the year, $20 million, the vast majority of that will be generated by a small number in the firm, right? Like it's the, what is it, the 80-20 rule? But every lawyer should have a number in their mind of what their piece of that should be, right? They should endeavor to get there. It's not something that it's not a deal breaker, but like, isn't that how you should define your goal? So if you're 10 lawyers and you're $20 million, my goal should be to hit 2 million next year, right? Like, I should at least map out a plan for myself that says, this is how I want to at least try to get there. And that's the exercise that I do with all of our associates at the end of the year, is like, here's your cases, here's what you have in your pipeline, let's put together your plan. Where do you think you're gonna hit? Okay, so you've got $1 million that you feel really good about. Where are we gonna come up with the other $1 million? Let's do it intentionally, because what you don't wanna do is, at the end of the year, say, well, I had 3 cases, they were gonna go to trial, COVID happened, they didn't go to trial, I brought in nothing this year, right? Like, you should have, COVID's a bad example, but like, you should have more of a plan than just like, these are the 3 cases that I'm gonna work on, or these are the 50 cases that I'm gonna work on, and hopefully like, I'm gonna have a good year. So bring this in for a landing. If there's anything that you take away, it's number one, it starts with communication, talking to the people in your firm, identifying your stakeholders, getting them to buy into the process, measurement, figuring out a way to hold people accountable, looking at your metrics, analyzing your data. And then, like I said, setting up a goal sheet and making sure that people are accountable to it. We do this exercise at the end of the year, and then we will revisit it every quarter to make sure, it's a living, breathing document. It's something that you pivot through as needed, but it gives everybody like a frame for what they're gonna achieve. And this is just, my last plug for Litify, which is one of the beauties of it is that once we have established what our parameters are, we have all these different reports that we keep on the attorney dashboards, everything from like your SOLs to your projection analysis, which is what I talked about earlier, settlement reports, trial reports, demands. We have one, the demands and negotiations one, I think I was talking to Molly about yesterday. But it's a great way for like anybody to kind of dive in and say like, how many demands did we do this month? And like, who was the insurance company? And what's happening with it? What do we expect to see? So all of this is, I think, the value that Litify brings to the table when you are trying to establish goals for your firm is like, obviously all the metrics are super helpful, but also just being able to have a nice, easy, tidy place where you can go and do like quick snapshots of like taking the pulse of the firm. I think that's it.